So I will press record right now. Awesome. So it's May. Our theme this month is Plant a Seed of Change, and it's all about gardening, planting, growing your own food, trying to reduce your impact through sustainable gardening. And tonight we have a really exciting presentation from Maddie Hague, who's the program manager for Food Stash Foundation. And they work to reduce food waste. And it's like a food recovery program. And her presentation will be on closing the food insecurity gap and reducing environmental impacts of food waste. So I'm going to hand it over to Maddie. And then after Maddie, we have Siri from Farmfolk City Folk joining us. And then at the end of the call, as usual, we'll be able to ask lots of questions. I hope this will be a time for questions for the presenters, and also just for this community that's gathered here, we can throw out random gardening questions or whatever it is you want to ask. So Maddie, take it away.
Great, thanks so much. And thanks for the introduction, Izzy. And yeah, I guess we can just start sharing my slides and we'll just jump right into it. Okay. Possible?
Yeah. Right.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll just wait for it to go to full screen.
Shoot, did that not work? Hold on. Is it full screen or no?
It's not full screen. It's not in present mode, but
that's
I can
weird.
still work with that for sure.
Okay, here, hold on. It is in my computer, so let me see here. Maybe I can do it here. Share screen. Oh, I see what was going on there.
Cool. And then yeah, present mode, that should be perfect. Okay. Nice. Yay. Okay. Awesome. Great. Well, yeah, thank you for the introduction. My name's Maddie. I'm the program manager for Food Stash Foundation. And just before I dive in, I'd just like to acknowledge that I'm currently on the unceded territory of these Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. And for me, that territorial acknowledgement just means reflecting regularly on how I can give back to this land and the people on it. And my work through Food Stash is one of those ways. So yeah, I guess we'll just dive into what we do and why it's important. Next slide. Great. Oh, just one back. Perfect. So yeah, Food Stash Foundation's vision is based on a future of zero hunger and no negative environmental impact from food waste. And so that's our mission. We want to close the food insecurity gap, because here in Vancouver, there's a pretty large wealth gap, and that's closely related to food insecurity. And we also would like to end the environmental impact of food waste here in our community. So next slide. Okay, so one thing about hunger is that perhaps it's kind of slipped off the radar. Maybe folks think that, you know, we're doing pretty well in regards to global food insecurity and hunger, but actually after decades of decline, we're actually seeing hunger on the rise again. And it's what's really unfortunate is that even though we're seeing an increase in hunger, there's also a lot of food waste globally. So worldwide, 1/3 of the food we produce is lost or wasted. And so when I say food loss, that kind of refers to perhaps apples rotting under the tree because there's a lack of labor, or, you know, just not being able to get food to market. And food waste is, you know, having good food in a retail situation, or having good food at home and then allowing it to go to waste and to perish. So when you look at fruits and vegetables in particular, that number actually increases to 45% wasted worldwide. But nevertheless, the UN has a goal to end hunger by 2030 as part of their United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And so just zooming in from the global to the national scope, unfortunately, we are seeing a rise in food insecurity here in Canada as well as globally, especially with the pandemic impacting people's source of income. So pre-pandemic, in Canada, we had rates of food insecurity of 1 in about 9.5 people experiencing food insecurity, and that's gone up to 1 in 7 people. So that's actually quite significant when you think about it. 1 in 7 people struggling to put food on the table, struggling to find culturally appropriate foods, just struggling to obtain food and experiencing barriers to health and nutrition. And what's actually really embarrassing is that Canada wastes 58% of the food that is produced here, which is just wild. That's higher than America. It's kind of a shame. I think it's mostly related to the fact that food is quite plentiful here in Canada. We are a relatively wealthy nation, and we're also really big water wasters as well. So it's kind of this trend you see where food or water is plentiful, you also see a lot of waste. But of that waste, 32% of that food could be rescued to feed people. It would have been perfectly good. It was just allowed to perish or was thrown away. But Canada, in relation to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, has also committed to a 50% reduction in food loss and waste by 2030. Great. And something I really want to focus on in terms of food insecurity is just all the different layers when it comes to environmental issues. Any environmental issues, there's all sorts of layers of social issues as well, and the two can't be considered in silos separate from each other. So if you consider how food insecurity is tightly related to poverty, you can also see how who experiences food insecurity is closely related to social injustices. So across Canada, you'll find about 11% of white individuals are food insecure, but that number jumps up to about 28% in Indigenous individuals and 29% for Black individuals. And also, if you look into the provincial scope, you'll see a higher rate of food insecurity among single parent families and especially among single mother families. And lastly, just coming back to the way that issues kind of layer, if you think about how having access to healthy food is really closely related to your immune system and your health and your well-being, FSC found that racialized groups are disproportionately more likely to be both food insecure and susceptible to COVID-19. So there's just all these different layers that we have to consider when we're thinking about these problems and solutions. Okay, so what about the environmental impact of food waste? Perhaps this is also something that isn't really thought about that much. I know when I was doing activism around climate change, it was mostly about oil and gas, and that was kind of the main focus, but a lot of emissions are produced from food waste and a lot of other environmental issues. So if you take, for example, one orange requires 50 liters of water to grow, and if you consider all of the resources in the soil and all other things that go into that, the labor, we're actually wasting quite a lot when we throw away food. And if we were to consider the amount of emissions that come from food waste as if it were a country, food waste would be the 3rd largest greenhouse gas emitter in the world, just after China and the US. And the reason for that, the reason why food waste produces so many emissions is because when organics go to landfill, they produce methane, which is a much stronger greenhouse gas than CO2 in terms of how much heat it traps. And there was a really interesting study done by the National Zero Waste Council just in 2020, where they used computer models to look at different scenarios and how they could reduce emissions. They were specifically looking at cutting back food waste and cutting back packaging. And they found that in the one scenario where they just eliminated all packaging, they saw an increase in food waste and therefore more emissions. But so in the end, they actually found that the best route, I suppose, for reducing emissions in Canada would be to indeed cut food loss and waste by 50%, as Canada committed to. And then just making sure that all packaging waste goes into the correct stream. So properly recycling and composting packaging, and also lightweighting packaging. So getting rid of any unnecessary packaging, just taking it down to the most bare essentials, and using the proper materials. And this is just a nice little graphic from Metro Vancouver, just to explain why food waste creates greenhouse gases, and why when food goes to landfill, it's more harmful than when we compost our food. So when food goes to landfill, it's covered up by all kinds of garbage, and it's broken down through an oxygen-starved process. And so those microbes release methane gas. And as mentioned before, that just traps way more heat than carbon dioxide. Whereas if you're composting your food, the microbes break it down through an oxygenated process. And so it just produces CO2. So it's still not great. We don't want to waste food at all, but it's better than producing methane in the landfill. Okay, so what do we do at Food Stash Foundation? Well, so yeah, as mentioned, we rescue food, we recover it from going to waste. So we are partnered with about 15 supplier partners. They might be supermarkets like Whole Foods or Stong's or Save On. We also partner with farms like Farmfolk, City Folk, and with wholesalers. And we pick up perishable food, things like dairy, breads, tons of produce, things that are still good, but perhaps the best before date is coming up and the food hasn't sold. So the store's already restocking and replenishing, and they're not using that food. So we take that. And that ends up being about 65,000 pounds a month from only 15 suppliers in Vancouver. So you can probably imagine just how much food goes to waste nationally or just across the province. It's pretty wild just to think about that. And then we take that food, and right away, about 86% of it goes right to our charity partners. So these are local charities that have their own food security programming. Maybe they make meals, maybe they do food hampers, and they give that food out to folks in need. And then about like 10 to 15% of the food that we rescue, we bring back to our headquarters. We sort it out. So some of the food has perished and we do have to compost it, but we keep all that good food and we package it up into reusable totes, and we bring it to the doorsteps of our members. So right now we have just over 80 members, which ends up being about 175 individuals when you include everyone in the household benefiting from the food. And we also found that the delivery service turned it out to be really great in terms of COVID and serving vulnerable populations and keeping them safe, but also fed. And we're proud to be using reusable totes rather than just single-use plastic bags and things like that. And so what are we going to be doing this year? What are we really focusing on improving? One thing is things like this presentation. We want to be doing more advocacy and education about food waste and what we can do. We want to do more research. We work a lot with the University of British Columbia and various groups there. And they just really help us just be the best at what we do, and just research how we can do better. We are also extremely passionate about reducing our own emissions. So while we realize that by keeping food from going to waste, we cut those emissions quite dramatically, we're very aware of the fact that we use 2 big trucks to do that. And so we try and get creative, like how can we make our routes more efficient, and how can we cut our emissions and waste. And one really fun and awesome thing we do is partner with Shift Delivery Cooperative, and they do delivery through electric bikes and trailers. They've been really amazing with partnering with us and solving problems together. So that's our Pedal to Plate program that delivers food to members' doorsteps through zero emissions. And we also have our original rescued food box, which is delivered by volunteers in their cars. And we definitely still really appreciate those folks as well. Actually, yeah, sorry, could we go back one? I was just going to mention that we also try really hard to follow the food recovery hierarchy. So the very last thing we want to do is have food ending up in the compost. And so there is sometimes food that maybe has a speck of mold on it, or it's just, it needs to be used today. And so we've done different partnerships with groups to create cooked meals. And we're also working with Scratch Foods right now. They take some of that food where you need to cut off the not good bits, and then they do fermentation. They make like kimchi and vinegars. So it's just fun to get creative and use that food as well. Thanks. Yeah, so if you're feeling inspired and you want to get involved, we're always looking for volunteers. Right now, we're specifically in need of delivery volunteers. So I mentioned we have that Pedal to Plate program, but we also have our original rescued food box program, and our delivery volunteers are amazing heroes that we depend on to get the food to our members. So if you'd like to sign up, you can go to foodstash.ca/volunteer, or you can email our coordinator, Majube, at coordinator@foodstash.ca. And I just had that. Oh, more slides.
Sorry.
That's all right. I know it seems like the end there. I just wanted to share a couple of resources in case folks want to do a little bit more research or need some tips on how they can reduce food waste at home. So the National Zero Waste Council is that group I mentioned at the very beginning that did those various computer models, and they do some great quantitative research. There's also Second Harvest for anyone who's in Ontario. This group is Canada's largest food rescue nonprofit. They're based out of Toronto. There's also Food Share out of Toronto. There's actually just a lot of amazing groups across Canada as well. It's kind of fun to look into. Food Secure Canada is a great policy advocate. They do a lot of social science research. And even just on our blog, if you go to foodstash.ca, you'll find our blog on there, and we try and do some research of our own, looking into challenges and solutions. And some really quick tips for yourselves if you want to reduce food waste at home. These are some of my favorite tips. Just buying the ugly produce, you know, it's still going to taste great, but if it's maybe a weird size or shape or has some markings on it, buy it because no one else will. And when it comes to wilted herbs or lettuce or celery, you can just cut the bottoms off of those, put it in a glass of water, and it will be like new, or you can blend it up and freeze it for smoothies for later. There's lots of great meal planning apps out there to help you figure out what groceries you're going to buy before you go, so you only buy what you need. You can take a picture of your fridge or pantry before you go shopping, or you can have an eat first section of the fridge, which is super helpful as well. Great, so this is my contact information. If anyone needs to get in contact, we're always happy to do more presentations or collaborate. And the last slide I have is just a quick summary of our April impact. And I apologize, it's a little bit blurry, but just this past month, we were able to rescue over 70,000 pounds of food, which meant a savings of over 61,000 kilograms of carbon emissions. You can just see how that's broken down between charities and our boxes, and just about 2% of that ends up being composted. We've got 59 families on our original rescued food box program and 25 on our new Pedal to Plate program. And that's where we're really focusing the growth so we can do zero emissions delivery. And there's some also some KPIs about volunteers there as well. And that's everything for me.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Maddie.
Thank you.
What a cool organization. So we will have time at the end to ask Maddie questions. And so if you have a question, hold on to it, write it down so you don't forget it. And I'm going to stop screen sharing if I can. How do I do this here? Sorry. Ah. No.
Here, I can stop
there it
by screen sharing mine.
Stop share. There we go. Okay, awesome. So yeah, now we have Siri Van Gruen, who is here with us from Farmfolk city folk to talk about saving seeds and just gardening more sustainably. So I'll let Siri take it away.
Great, thank you so much. I'll just pull up my presentation here. Okay, present. Great, so yeah, I'm with Farmfolk City Folk and I'm the BC Seed Security Program Coordinator. Today I'll be talking to you about the importance of seeds. We'll go over crop biodiversity loss, importance of locally adapted seeds, and I'll share with you some seed saving resources. So first of all, let's go over a little bit about the history of seed saving. So gardeners and farmers have been saving seeds and other reproductive materials for the last 12,000 years. It's only since the 20th century that there's been a major shift to purchasing seed annually from commercial seed growers, opposed to saving it ourselves. And today with that, we see an increase in seed patents and barriers to seed saving. And this has ultimately led to the commercialization, consolidation, and ultimately control of seeds. So I've got a bit of a shocking fact. So the top 10 seed and chemical companies control 73% of the global market. And to make this even crazier, the top 3 control nearly 50% of the market. So that's most of your seeds. Most of the seeds we have coming from very few companies. And I underlined the word chemicals for a reason. I just wanted to put it out there that the same people that are creating the majority of the seeds are producing the fertilizers and pesticides that go along with it, because if they create seeds that respond well to fertilizers, they can sell their products and make more profits. It's a good business model, but maybe less good for the environment. So here I'm just going to go over some agricultural and food sector emissions. Maddie went over it a little bit, but I want you to take a look at the red square at the bottom there. That's carbon dioxide made from just producing the fertilizers. We're not even using it, we're just producing it, and we're getting that much carbon dioxide. And then once we apply our fertilizers, especially nitrogen, it can off-gas nitrous oxide, which is 298 times more powerful than carbon dioxide. So it's really warming our atmosphere fast. So it's problematic that a lot of our seed producers have stakes in agrochemical production. So next, I'm just going to talk a bit about loss of crop diversity. So we've seen a major decline in 2 main areas. First, the number of crop species commonly grown. There's been a global shift to high caloric, energy-dense foods, cereals and oil crops like corn, soybean, wheat, rice, those kind of things, and a shift away from cultivated fruits and vegetables, spices, and wild plants. The stuff that is actually really good for us. So it's a bit of a shame. Our diets are all becoming a bit more homogeneous, less variable. And the other area we're seeing a major decline in is the genetic diversity within a crop. So we'll have our one tomato, but there's less species being grown. We're consolidating we're really decreasing the variety of varieties of crops that we're growing. And all of this collectively leads to a decrease in food security. So now I'll just talk about the importance of crop diversity. First of all, it protects from crop disease. When you have we've seen it in the past, like in history, there was the Great Famine of Ireland. That was caused by having most of the potatoes in Ireland being super similar genetically. So when the fungus came along, Phytophthora, it was able just to wipe out their entire crops because there was no genetic diversity. There wasn't some potatoes that were resistant that would have been able to feed these people. So it led to a lot of people dying and a lot of people having to flee their home, which is awful. We also saw this with the Gros Michel banana wipeout in 1940, since all of our bananas pretty much were from the Gros Michel variety. When a virus hit and took them all out, we had no bananas left. And if it wasn't for indigenous communities that were saving other bananas and saving the seeds and propagating them, we would have been without bananas. And we even see it more recently. Like in 1970s, there was a huge wipeout of corn crop in the United States and millions of dollars of loss. So other reasons why we want some crop diversity is it reduces the need for pesticides and herbicides. If we have a lot of diversity, we can select certain plants, find varieties that are more resistant to certain pests. But if we don't have that variety, we don't have anything to search from. We're limited to the genetics that we have. Also, if you have a whole bunch of different crops, you're kind of protecting against crop failure from what I was just previously saying. And also, let's say you do have a disease wipe out tomatoes, for example. Well, if you're growing eggplant, zucchini, and other things too, it's not a big problem. But if you had all your eggs in tomato production, you're not going to be doing so well. So yeah, really crop diversity is important for many reasons. So here's some of the recommendations from the FAO to protect crop diversity. One of them is promoting funding of gene banks. This is an example of ex situ, which means off of site. So this is things like storing seeds over time and other propagation material. The most notable one is called the Svalbard Seed Bank. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's kind of called people call it like the doomsday tank. Like if everything was to go wrong in the world, we could head on up to the Arctic in Norway and enter the seed bank, which is huge, has a giant collection of seeds. But gene banks are definitely one way to keep our genetic diversity. Another one, which I really like, is promoting in situ, so in place conservation of crop diversity by farmers and backyard gardeners, just like you guys. So when you're in this challenge and you're growing your food, you guys are conserving crop diversity by doing that, which is excellent. I'm very proud of all of you. And the last thing we can do is we can object to seed patents. So the reason why seed patents have become so prominent is plant breeders it can take years to create a variety. I'm talking 12, 15 years. You have to be a very dedicated plant breeder if you want to create your own variety. So oftentimes after they've put in all this work, they need to patent the crop to be able to make profits, because it's hard to make profits during that time. One of the co-ops we've been working with is called BC EcoSeed Co-op, and they've been trying to actually sell the breeding populations. And for some people, buying seeds that are breeding populations is less popular because you don't have expected outcomes. Normally when you get a seed package, it says this seed will grow 6 feet tall and you'll get 4 to 6 ounces fruit and that kind of thing. But when you get a breeding population, it's kind of like more buying one of those mixed Swiss chard packs where every Swiss chard is a different color. And people don't always like that. They like to know what they get, but I think it's a really cool idea. So supporting breeding projects is also a great way to protect crop diversity. So now I'm going to talk a bit about the importance of locally adapted seed. So first of all, locally adapted seed is important because it works well in your environment. Everywhere is different. What works well at high elevations at the top of the mountain isn't going to work well near the ocean basin where it's super salty. You might want to find a variety that's salt resistant, but somebody up in the Himalayas probably wouldn't need that, you know? And also, it encourages local seed production, which increases your local seed security. COVID-19, we saw a huge increase in seed demand. It was something like 250%. And somewhere like 500% more people were interested in gardening, which is, I mean, not happy about COVID-19, but it's nice that people are getting into gardening because of it. So we saw some seed shortages, of course, because a lot of people were relying on these bigger companies and there just wasn't the supply. So if you have a local seed production, you're more likely to be able to access seed, which is a good thing. And also one that I think is really cool is seeds are really a part of culture. A lot of seeds tell a story. Who grew those seeds? Where did they get it from? It's really cool. I mean, my grandma passed me down some tomatoes that she's been growing her whole life, and I get to think, oh wow, my grandma enjoyed this tomato for years, and it's kind of special. Seeds definitely tell a story, and look into where your seeds come from because it's kind of interesting. So now how you can increase seed diversity. The number one thing I definitely recommend is grow your own seed. This also has tons of ecological benefits. We normally harvest annual crops before they even go to flower, so they don't even serve ecological benefits. We don't like it when our kale goes to flower because then it gets all bitter. But you know what? It gets bitter to us, but then all of the flowers are feeding the pollinators. And afterwards you can save seed from that kale. So yeah, I just think it's fun to save your own seed, and it definitely helps promote seed diversity. Another thing you can do is support your local seed companies. And the third one is you can purchase a wide variety of produce. When you're at your local market or farmer's market, buy the unusual tomato variety that you haven't seen before, because it's letting farmers know that you're okay with trying new things, and they're able to buy more diverse seeds and grow it. So it's a win-win. You get to try new things and you're supporting seed diversity. Here I have another stat for you guys. So out of the 8,345 vegetable seed varieties that are from 89 Canadian companies, 69% of those are only available from one company each. So you know what this means? If you save seeds from one of those 69% of seeds, you are effectively doubling the amount of people growing that. So now if that seed company all of a sudden stops producing, guess what? You've been saving in your backyard. That genetics is not going to be lost. And that's something any of us can do. And it's not that hard. So now I'll just talk a little bit about basic type of cultivars. So we have our open pollinated. These ones are great. They describe a plant variety that has uninhibited transfer of pollen between members of species, which keeps the gene pool diverse and allows varieties to slowly change to the new environment. So you can continuously save the best bean in your garden, and eventually it's going to get pretty adapted to your specific garden, which is super cool. And next we have our hybrids. These cultivars are produced by crossing inbred lines. So basically you're taking two crops, you're selfing them, and then after that you're crossing those two and you're getting a super vigorous next generation. This is usually good for farmers who want a pretty homogeneous field because it makes plants that are pretty similar to each other, making it easier to use large machinery, but you can't save seeds from hybrids. Well, you can, but they won't look like the parent. They'll have genes from the previous generation. It'll just be completely different. So definitely look for open pollinated plants or heirloom plants. And heirloom plants are open pollinated, but they are more specifically referred to an old cultivar of plant that has been grown, selected, and maintained by farmers and gardeners for generations. And these ones are usually tasty because they've been selected for that rather than being able to ship long distances. So they're great to look for, super yummy. And also, I just wanted to note that I did say open pollinated between members of species. So sometimes a plant, while they might look different, like a broccoli looks different than a kale, they're actually the same species. So if you were growing them side by side and they both flower, you might save the seeds and get a Franken kale broccoli, which might be cool for you. I mean, I'd be into a kale broccoli, but you might be surprised by your effects. But that's the thing with seed saving is you can, and gardening is just full of surprises in general. I don't think it's something to be scared of. It's something to test out and see what happens. So before I let you go, I'll just talk a bit about Farmfolk City Folk. So our vision is sustainable food systems where people and planet thrive. And to do so, we aim to connect, empower, and inspire people to strengthen BC's food system. So some of our mandates are to empower and advocate for BC farmers. We like to support climate-friendly agricultural practices, and we like to try to protect agricultural land. Our second big mandate is to inspire and equip people to eat food that nourishes them and the planet. So that involves things like sharing seed saving resources like I'm doing now, and just talking to consumers about the impacts their food choices have. And to do so, we try to maximize our impact through robust communications and operation systems. So now I'm going to talk a bit about just my program, the BC Seed Security Program. We have lots of different things that we do. We're a nationally focused seed security program, but it's regionally served. So we work with the BAUDA Initiative on Canadian Seed Security, which we meet across Canada with these different growers, and we put together variety trials. Variety trials are really cool because they get people to try a whole bunch of different varieties of a single crop and figure out which one works best for them. One of the notable ones is we run the Citizen Seed Trial, which is a super fun trial. We're not registering anymore, but if you guys want to check it out, you should follow the Citizen Seed Trial Facebook group and follow along. And then next year you could be part of the trial. You basically get sent 2 crops and you compare them and just see, kind of step into the plant breeder's shoe and see what you're looking for. And you have a whole support network of people who are also growing it. So it's great for beginner gardeners. We also have our Seed to Food program, which is at our seed research and education seed farm. What people don't think about is oftentimes the byproduct of seed production is actually food. So our partnership with Food Stash and with Maddie has been super great because I get to drive our food that would normally go to the compost, and it gets redirected. So that's great. And we have lots of other events too, like public seed events, teaching people about seeds and farmer field days, lots of things. So next up, I'll talk to you a bit about some directories and resources. So if you're from BC, you should definitely check out our website. We've got an awesome list of BC seed suppliers. There's so many and they're great companies. I would highly recommend you support them. We also have a list of BC seed libraries. Seed libraries are a great way to jump into gardening and seed saving, because it's like taking in a book. You get free seeds, like you get free books. You grow them out and then you can have your produce, they go to seed and you just take them back. And you give back your seeds, it's a nice way to connect with your community. And it's also a really low stress operation. If you're not able to save seeds, it's not a big deal. But it's fun to try out and it's a good place to build community. Another thing we have on our website is the BC CD Saturdays and Sundays event listings. And if you don't know what CD Saturdays are, they're super fun events. They're across Canada. If you're looking for one in your own town, Seeds of Diversity Canada has a listing of all the CD Saturday events across Canada. And they are basically an event where you can go swap seeds that you have. So if you're have seeds, you can go find somebody who has some other seeds, share them. There's sometimes in conjunction with farmers markets. There's often a local seed producer there that you can buy seeds from. They're just awesome events. And we also have a community supported agricultural map on our website. And CSAs are a great way to support local farmers and get super fresh food. So I'd recommend finding a CSA in your area. They're quite fun because you get a wide diversity of crops and things that you might not have tried otherwise. So kind of neat. So on this next page, I just have some directories and resources from across Canada. So you can take a look at your region. Some of my favorite ones, if you're a young person looking to get into farming, Young Agrarians is super awesome. I love the Seeds of Diversity Instagram page. They always have lots of fun programs going on. Canadian Organic Growers has a really good directory of organic seed producers, so that's also an awesome one to check out. They're all really good. And to finish it off, I just want to say a quote from our founder, her Barbalet. So, something happens to people who plant seeds. It is impossible to watch something grow and flourish without getting a sense of the miracle of all life. So with that, I hope I've convinced at least one of you to try your hand at saving seeds this year, because it really does make a big difference at increasing our nation's seed security. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Siri. Well, lots of really interesting information in these two presentations. So I'll open it up for questions now. You can either put them in the chat or just take yourself off mute and ask them. I know a lot of you are all planting gardens or have planted gardens, and so you might have some questions specific to what these ladies spoke about or anything else. So let us know. Siri, for people who have never saved seeds before, like what would you say is the best, how do you store them over the winter?
Oh, the best ones to store, I would say really airtight containers are really good. Like if you just have an old jar and putting your seeds in there. I'd say some of the easiest crops to start with are like peas and beans and just anything that is self-pollinated, especially beans and peas. Especially if you just accidentally leave it on the plant too long and it's getting hard and crunchy, you can just save that for seed instead. And it's a good way to get started. But yeah, just airtight containers. And there's lots of resources online. Like if you're looking to save tomato seeds, you can ferment them and try your hand at that, which is kind of fun. But yeah, airtight containers.
Okay, cool. Pablo has a question. He says, Siri, where can I find seeds that won't produce plants with sterile seeds?
I would say you're going to want to look for the words open pollinated. Those are, if you see that word on a seed producer's website, that means that they are able to cross between each other and they won't be sterile. Oftentimes when you save seeds from market produce, they're actually hybrids that have either been bred to have sterile seeds or because they are hybrids, they'll produce plants that are kind of inferior because they get the inbred genetics from the parents. Yeah, I hope that clears it up. But yeah, open pollinated and heirloom seeds are what you want to look for.
So if you bought sorry, I'm new to seed saving, but if you bought an heirloom tomato at the market, you could cut that open and dry the seeds and save them for.
Yeah, you should be able to. Yeah. You also have to be a bit careful about making sure things are open source. But if you're just a backyard gardener, nobody's going to get mad at you for like accidentally saving a patent seed. That's more of a problem for farmers. Right. But yeah, if you have heirloom tomatoes at your farmer's market or any heirloom kind of plants, those ones should all have seeds that you can save from. But there's also oftentimes what is maturity for eating is different from maturity for seed saving. So while your cucumbers, for example, when you eat your cucumber, the seeds are super soft and they're not ready to be saved for seeds. You would have to leave your cucumber on the plant a lot longer and wait for those seeds to go hard. So as seed saving does come with a bit of food waste, which we're trying to avoid as much as we can by diverting that kind of waste, but there are a few plants where it's a bit tricky.
So it's best to leave them, you wouldn't just take a bean off the stalk and then let it dry. You want to let it harden and dry on the actual plant?
Ideally you want it to harden and dry on the plant.
Okay, cool. Sydney is wondering, do seeds expire? She got some old ones from her neighbor.
They do expire. Most seeds just decline in germination, in general around 10% a year, but it depends on the type of seed. Like let's say we're talking mangoes. Nobody would be growing mangoes here, but they're called recalcitrant seeds and they actually can't be dried at all. That's kind of a rare seed, but in general, most seeds they'll still be okay. They don't expire, but it's just the germination percentage will get down. So what you can do to avoid this is if they were fresh seeds, you might in your little container, just put one seed, just put 2 seeds and you'll double the chance that one will grow.
Cool. Kevin says, I'm using an indoor veggie home hydroponics setup. What are your thoughts on something like this for indoor growing over the winter?
I think hydroponics are awesome. I mean, people have different opinions because they do use fertilizers and you have to kind of add your own nutrients. But I think in a place like Canada where we don't have access to growing vegetables outside year round, I think hydroponics does increase our food security, because if we increase our production of hydroponic fruits and vegetables, if we had supply chain issues, we'd have more grown locally. So I do think that hydroponics will definitely play a part in increasing food security in Canada, specifically for a colder climate.
Cool. Sharon says she saved bok choy seeds in the pods. That's cool.
That's super cool. I've never saved bok choy seeds. I don't think I've actually grown bok choy before, but maybe I should try that this year. My dad was busy building I got him to help me build planter beds this year because my old garden bed was getting too shaded, so I'm moving it.
Nice. Exciting.
What are you guys growing this year? If you want to drop it in the comments, I'd be interested to see what you've done for Plant a Seed Month.
Yeah, I'd love to hear what people are growing and or what their garden setup is, because it's cool to hear, there's hydroponic setups and garden boxes and stuff like that. Red peppers and cannabis. Nice.
Very cool. Yeah, red peppers, that's fun to save. Peppers are fun to save the seed from. And I mean, cannabis, you don't necessarily want your male plants to be pollinating your females, but if they do by accident, you can get seeds from those too.
Nice, Hannah.
Oh, radishes, arugula, Swiss chard, kale, and mint in my local community garden. Awesome. Yeah. Radishes, when they go, I'm pretty sure radishes are biennial, so you wouldn't get seeds this year, but if you wanted to try, if you store them over winter, like in straw or something, you can plant them out next year. and they'll grow, and it's giant. Like radishes, they're such small little plants, but when they go to seed, they get so big, and you get these seed pods. And I don't know why we don't eat these seed pods, because they're so tasty. We were saving them from our farm last year, and oh my God, I kept on eating all of our seeds that I was supposed to wait to dry on the plant. But they're tasty.
That's cool. I've never seen that before.
It's quite pretty. And arugula and mint are cool too, because a lot of them are perennials. So you'll continue to get food year after year, which is fun. And kale can actually perennialize too. It's also biennial. So if you want to just leave it in your garden, if you have the space, next year you could watch it go to flower in early spring. It's beautiful, bright yellow flowers. The bees love it, and you can see if you'll save seeds. And with what you've got, nothing should cross with that. So you'd have pure kale seeds.
Cool. Lots of good things. People are going to be making good salsas and stuff.
Yeah. Potato. Okay, potato is one of those ones that are more like asexually propagated. So normally you just take the potato and cross it. But at our seed farm, right now I'm engaging, it's called the Kenosha Potato Seed Project. And because potatoes do go to seed, but most people don't realize it. Because a lot of potatoes that has been bred out of them. So they don't actually go to seed anymore, but some potatoes do get flowers, and then they get these little, I don't know, kind of weird green, I don't know, they're kind of like mini green tomatoes or something. And they have the tiniest little seeds. And yeah, so I sent some potato seeds across the country to some different growers. So, and potato seed saving is super important because potatoes are asexually propagated. They're one of those ones like the banana that is quite, I would say, susceptible to crop diseases. Like if one hits one, they hit a lot of them because they're clonally propagated instead of sexually propagated by seeds. So it's kind of interesting. Yeah.
Awesome. Stan just said that there's an app called Flash Food, which helps you find stuff in grocery stores that they're going to throw out and sells it at a heavy discount to reduce food waste. That's really cool. I've never heard of that, and I'm definitely going to check it out. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, I got to write that down.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. I just wanted to mention as well, if you are not following POW on Instagram, you should check it out. We are going to post a couple of Insta stories this month from different people in our community that are really into gardening and stuff like that. So one of them we are looking forward to is one of our ambassadors, Chris Rubens, and his partner, Jessie Johnson Hill, who's actually Greg Hill's younger sister, started a farm last year in Revelstoke, and they just bought property this year, and they're planting it. And so they are going to do some Instagram stuff for us on transplanting their starts. And then also we've recently connected with a group called Blading for Bees, and they are planning a trip to rollerblade across Canada to raise awareness for bees and pollinators. And May 20th is National Bee or World Bee Day, I think. And so they'll be posting some information on pollinators and how to plant your garden to support pollinators and stuff like that. So lots of cool stuff coming out this month. There are just so many great resources about gardening and growing food and saving food waste. So we'll try and share as much as possible. And yeah, I encourage you to send us any interesting things you find, like that app and stuff like that. It's great to share with our community, and especially on the 12-month challenge Facebook group. It's been great to see what people are growing there, and seeing people kind of like gain wisdom from others, and it's awesome. So thank you so much for participating, and we have a few minutes left if there are any last questions. If not, we'll just sign off and give you the rest of your evening. Thank you, Siri and Maddie, so much. Really, really excited to hear about your great organizations and all the work you're doing.
Thanks so much for hosting us. It was really fun. And Siri, your presentation was amazing. I'm very inspired.
Thanks so much, Maddie. It's always great connecting with you. And thanks so much, Izzy, for having me, and with everybody at PAO that's here.
Totally. And we'll be posting this on our YouTube channel and our Facebook group as well. So you can share it if you'd like. Thanks so much.